And we're back. Okay, so yesterday, or day before yesterday, whenever the last time we were on, we were looking at these Orlocks, and I went on a little bit with the blue on their shirts, and I got 4 of them, pretty much the color that I wanted. I'm going to come back and actually work a little bit more on each one tonight for about an hour here. And I will move faster through colors. Somebody mentioned to me that they wanted to see a little bit more colors. Obviously, it's kind of boring watching me paint the same color over and over. So anyway, just going to jump in and go right at that. As always, going to mention Daniel Denaro, whose music I'm using here. I also was told that I need to turn that music up in the background a little bit, so I'm using scale 75 paints. So scale 75 paints, and I have just about any paint. So if there's another paint that you guys would like to know what I would use instead of, I have P3, I have Vallejo. I don't use Games Workshop paints very often. I've got a couple, mostly because I don't like the containers they come in. So anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of bounce back and forth between 2 of these guys, and I'll actually throw blue on this one so those of you who didn't watch the last episode can see how that got around. And I'm going to work mainly tonight on skin. I have 2 different kinds of skin tones I'm going to work on here. And I'm also going to work on, let's see, going to work on, leather. Okay, so going to work on the boots. Boots in the art, in the box art, are black leather. But I'm going to use the brown leather. Okay, so eventually the jackets will be more of a black leather, I'm thinking, but I might end up going with the brown leather. We'll just see how it looks on the boots first. I just want some contrast in there, and then metal shoulder pads. I haven't decided mainly yet whether they would be silver or a copper color or even gold, something like that. But these guys are pretty grungy, so may not go quite as finished with that. My wet palette here. I've got all kinds. I've got 2 different wet palettes that I use, different sizes and different brands. Brand's not important, even if you use one of those homemade kind that Uncle Adam from Tabletop Minions mentions a lot. That's fine. These were sent to me to try. I like the Masterson as well. The only thing I don't like about streaming with the Masterson is that the sponge is yellow, and so sometimes you don't get an idea really what the color is supposed to look like. So this is the Caspian blue. This is the color of the main color of the shirt, and I'm just going to throw some up here, and just a little dollop will do. This is where I come down to having try to put all the colors that I'm going to work on in one particular area on there. Now when I finish, there's going to be the blue in one area, there's going to be the brown for the leather in another area, and then I'll turn it around so you can see a little bit more of what goes on in the mixing stage for the skin tones that I work up here. So we'll work kind of back and forth there, but primarily tonight I'm just going to work on these 2 on camera so that you can kind of see stroke by stroke what goes on there. I'm Kelly. If you need anything, let me know. I don't know that I'll have all the answers, but I've been painting for upwards of 15 years. Painted mainly Flames of War. Paint a lot and play a little. That's the best thing I could say about my experience. So I'm going to make a video about this, or I have a video ready about this. It just hasn't posted yet, about some different levels that I start with, as far as whether you call it a tabletop standard and that kind of stuff. And so I actually have 7 different levels, and that sounds weird, but I'll explain more about that when you see that video. But anyway, this will be slightly above tabletop standard, and that's nothing to be ashamed of. If there were 30 or 40 of these guys, I would definitely be on like maybe a 3 or a 2. But instead, I'm going to go like a 4 on most of these here, which is right there in the middle of the 7 points that I talk about. So anyway, I think 7 would be like Golden Demon stuff. 6 would be display. 7 would be competition standard. 5 would be a really, really nice tabletop standard. And 4 is going to be just right there in the middle. Nothing too crazy, but also nothing really, really fast. So I'm going to go ahead and put on the palette here a couple of different colors that I'm going to use, and I'm going to use different blues to go here. But I'm going to put some black, just straight up flat black on here too. Squirt some of that on, just so that I have a little bit to go from. Now some people use, and I can put some acrylic retarder on here too. I don't plan to do very much wet blending right now, so it's more of a layering approach right now, and we'll let the paints work for themselves a little bit, but they're that gel medium, so it's not a big deal. They don't dry super fast anyway, but if we want to play around with that, I'll have some out on the palette there. That's just a mix of golden retarder, acrylic retarder. So I get this to come out a little better. There we go. There we go. It's a little bit more of a shadow color there instead of totally black. Then my highest highlight, sorry, that was Abyssal Blue. And then my highest highlight will be mixed with the base of the Caspian Blue and this Arctic Blue. And I'm going to actually use this Arctic Blue at a couple different places on the model, so a little bigger dollop there. Mainly using super cheap brushes. I do have some nicer ones here I might use when I get to the skin, but for right now I'm using just a Hobby Lobby brand, and I actually got a whole classroom set of these. It's mostly 6, 7s, and 8s, and it sounds like that's a huge brush to use, but the bigger the brush, the less you have to go back to the off camera here. I have a water bucket. Most people use a cup here, but this will be basically is going to rub into there, and I'm going to wash out there on that. I have some places I can put the other brushes over here if I don't want the paint to dry in the belly, but that's basically what's going to happen off camera. I also use a paper towel here, and you'll see from, I think I was painting some Nurgle, and just kind of what I do is I touch this after I'll go into the paint. I'll go in and touch, like after purple paint, when I get it thin, I'll actually touch and scrape and just make sure that the moisture wicks out of the brush before I put it back to the model. So anyway, if you see me reach away from the wet palette, that's what's going on there. I'll try to keep this sort of where you can see it, but I also made the mistake a couple of times of dropping the model into your wet palette, and that's my number one tip right there. Don't drop your mini into the wet palette. So I'll probably do it again at some point, but it's been a while, so we'll see. Alright, I don't really expect very many people to be on and watching. I don't have a ton of subscribers yet. 100's good, and I appreciate all of those guys, but I hope you could just grab something to work on and just paint along with me, and I'll try not to gab so much unless anybody has any questions or pops in. I'm gonna start with this blue, this Caspian blue here. I'm gonna pull it out. And you can get some flow improver into this as well. But right now it's pretty hydrated on here. There's a little bit of water already on there. So I'm going to go right in and go right over this whole area that I'm going to use. And I'm going to lay it on pretty thick here in the beginning, and then kind of spread it out. Not worried about thin, not even worried really about being super neat. I zenithal highlighted these guys first to start, so you can tell they're a little light on the top, and I need to do a better job with these guys. The guys I did the other night, I started with just the shadow on the bottom, and honestly, even though scale 75 paints aren't great at covering, I probably did need to lay down this first initial paint base coat, because there's several places where I was going back and looking at the ones I did the other night. Song get a little loud there, sorry about that. But I went back in and I had to fill in some of the spots that just wasn't enough paint on them. So even if I have to drop the shadows on top of that, that's what I'll end up doing. I'm also using the wet palette to kind of shape the tip a little bit right now. Once I get to thinner layers, I'll actually go over that. And touch that towel, like I said, just to make sure that the extra moisture wicks off of it. Could have also started with the skin here. It's going to be kind of tough to reach some areas, but when I'm taking a model and I'm trying to start with the painting, I'm going to start the closest to the middle of the bottle, so that I may go over some things that are higher, but back here, like his shirt underneath, it's okay if I hit these belts and things that he has going across his chest, because I can always go over the top of those. So if you guys are working on anything while you're watching tonight or listening along, let me know what you're working on, or what your next project is the next time you work. I will rarely stay on for more than an hour, so I have 3 kids and a beautiful wife, and usually this is my time to go away, and just after they go to bed, and I work for about an hour and start the next time there. So there you go. Just an idea what the shirt will start off like. I'm going to go back here with the one that I worked on the other night. You can see I stopped in some places, and actually that's some really dark blue paint under there. But that's what I used the other night to get started. I'm actually going to go in there and just lay in that base color a little bit better, get the rest of the shirt that I missed the other night. Like I said, I'm using scale 75 scale colors. One of many brands that I own, but I like painting with different colors all the time, and kind of keeps me up up on each of the paint qualities. Most of the time I will use a Vallejo skin tone. Tonight we're going to use these scale 75 just to see if I can stay consistent. Okay, I'm going to go over and wash out my brush again every now and then and reshape the tip on the brush so you can see that. The reason I'm going back and forth between these two models too is just to give it just a minute to dry. Okay. Also got to get in here and get this guy's shirt. Again, I'm not worried if I hit any of these belts or this ammunition belt he has, bandolier as they would call it, I guess. And it's okay to get paint down in there. Always easier to fix what's on top. Might actually use a glaze later to take this back down, so we'll see how that goes. And I am painting these kind of box art style. Okay, there's the blue. It might take another layer here, so I'm going to go ahead and do that just to get it nice and strong. So I can hear everybody basically yelling right now if you're watching this, hey, he's not thinning his paints. The wet palette actually does that for you to an extent. I do have some other mediums that I use to thin things from time to time, but right now with the base coat it's really not that important. The water's keeping it thin enough. Pop this chat out real quick here. About the Orlock gang, except they like blue shirts. They like to wear their blue shirts. Okay, go back and look again. Got one more coat. Okay. So I'm going to take a little bit of this. Take a little bit of this take a little bit of that blue out, and I'm going to take a little bit of the abyssal blue, kind of make a mixture here. I want it to be, it's kind of a muted closer there. There we go. It's a slightly more muted color just for the back side, the underside of the shirt. So the zenithal highlight kind of gives me an idea where things are going to go, but it's pretty easy to do on these models. The top half is going to be the lighter color, and then I'm going to use a desaturated color for the bottom, and then like I said, I'm going to add that Arctic blue to take it back up on the top, and maybe use some glazes in a couple minutes to see if we could just tint that color some different ways. So I'm going to take a little bit, just a tiny bit of this black, and I'm going to put it in here too. And you see, as I mix it on the board here, it's going to give me a couple of different shadow colors here. I'm going to get a darker one that has this blue, but then I'm going to have that medium shade. So this darker part will end up being really far under. A little there. Doesn't really matter if I get something on these leather jackets, because eventually those come out too. Try to keep that on the screen for you. Eventually those get covered up anyway, so. Work it down there. There we go. Let that guy dry. Go in. I'm going to wash the brush out. Take this blue, medium shadow blue, back on there for you. Let's go back to this other view so that we can see the wet palette easier. Liking that color a lot. This may go straight up with the abyssal blue for the pants. I may start with that anyway, so no mixture at all. While I've got that out, I'm going to just go ahead and lay that in on the pants. See how that looks. Pretty thick. And again, I can go right over some of the things, that buckles and stuff on the pants, because it's easier to come back and hide those than it is to get paint in between the buckles and things. Right on top of everything. I don't want to get this loincloth that he has here, because that can end up being a brighter color, so I don't want to try to paint over a bright color. We'll see. I don't know. Notice if that doesn't end up being a color that I want, then I will definitely want it to be darker, but I'll go with a different color and just kind of go with that if I need to. It's no big deal. It's a thin coat of paint. And switch back and forth between the guys. Let that one dry, that coat dry. We'll go with this one. Consistency of shadows can be, wash that out, challenging. I want it dark, but not too dark. And like I said, I want the darkest to have just a touch of black in it, so blue. Even if they end up touching each other like that, that's okay too, because it gives me an idea how all those colors are going to work together. Take a little bit more of this black and put it on the bottom end of that, you can see. There we go. There we go. So bottom end can go underneath. Those shadows just start to fall away on the model. If you do that right. Base tone again a little bit. Issue that I was going to use some pre-made bases on, but I just noticed that I used sort of a turquoise color on the bases, and I don't really want their shirts to match the ground because that'd be weird. Straight up into the abyssal. Dark charcoal blue. Again, I'm going to try not to hit the loincloth, but everything else, these get chains down there, that's not going to matter. Those are going to be metallic later. Tops of the boots are okay because I'm going to end up getting brown on top of that anyway. Just sticking paint back in there right now, so not a big deal. Underside needs to be this muted shadow. Keep laying paint in there. Every layer that goes on it just has a slight change in the color. Go back. Okay. So I'm going to start to kind of mix a little bit of this highlight over here. So I'm going to have my my highlight kind of stretch out. Enough of the base color over here. Going to use the Arctic blue. You just start to get that worked in over here. I can start it away from the blue. There you go. The Caspian blue, that's the base color. Then I'm actually going to go up here and start to pull these together. kind of feather that out. Even with this wet palette, this right here, this paint will probably dry out a little faster than I want it to, but that's okay. We can bring it back with a little bit of water and sometimes medium. There we go. So there's the idea between colors there. Always go back in and grab some of this. And while this is still in my brush, begin to rub it into the blue again here, and you can see I get some different colors of blue for the range of highlights I want to use. Okay, so you can see on this guy here, the Caspian blue has gone down a little bit. It's calmed down a little bit. It's not as bright as it was when it went on. So we're going to try to punch that back up. I'm going to use a little bit of the highlight color. Start to build some layers here. Excuse me. Kind of go right here on everything that light would hit. We'll stay really on the top of the miniature with all of the highlights. Okay. Maybe some back here. Even if it looks a little bright, I constantly remind myself that it's going to dry a little bit darker than it looks. I'm just trying to stay in this mid-tone of the highlight now. Sounds kind of redundant, but you know what I mean. I'm going to let that dry again. I don't like where this mix is right here, so that's a spot that I see right now. I dried a little darker than I wanted to, so go back into my shade / base coat and try to bring that back up a little bit. As always, it's harder to go light over dark. It's easier to go the other way. So that's why I was starting tonight with a little bit more of the base coat on, with the color that I wanted. And I can start to go back in with that actual base color, and kind of start to work on some of the highlights coming back together, to get more of a gradual transition from the color that you start with to the shadow color, and from the shadow color, from the base color to the highlight. Go back in and get his shirt here. Probably will work on the skin next here in just a second, so hang with me. Check back on his pants a little bit more. With this mid highlight again. Very, very small amount of paint on there. Should probably be seeing how much will flow off. You'll see that kind of started coming back down into the face color again. There we go. Start to work a little bit higher as this paint dries. Just gonna try to use the side of the brush to catch the edges of the shirt. Just get a lot more bounce out of that. Anytime I feel like I get too excited, I wait and let it dry a little bit before I come back in. Because like I said, it darkens up a little bit. This top part of the shirt too while we're at it. Gradually, I want those lighter colors to go to the top. Gradually, I want those colors to go to the top, lighter, to draw the eye upward. So there we go. A little bit too much on that part. Come back in with a dry brush. Take that back down a little bit. Okay. I think we can move away from the blue for just a minute. Let's go ahead and get these highlights one more time here, then we'll move away from the blue and go into the skin color a little bit. Building that a little bit at a time. If you don't know anything about scale color, scale 75 scale color paints, they very, very matte. Most of the time that's a good thing. Because it means that you can place your highlights wherever you want. But they can have a tendency to look a little bit chalky sometimes, so just have to be really careful with that. These brighter lines that I'm putting on here in just a minute, because that paint's wet, they'll actually kind of seep into that. So they kind of blend themselves on the model if you don't go super heavy with them. Use a light brush when you do that. You're starting to see there, you're starting to get some idea where the wrinkles are in the shirt. That's what we want. Again, we want it getting a little bit lighter toward the face so that your eye is drawn up to the face. And even if that's a little bright on his chest right there, I can come right in with the base color. Try to get that back a little bit. I'll even go highlight base color here. Bring that back to there. Just laying paint in. Go up here again, just check on these pants again. Guys gotta have good pants, right? Very desaturated blue-green there. It's gonna kind of tie the model together anyway, though. Especially when you get the warm color of the boots, kind of contrasting with that. There we go. Kind of make a little bit more colors here. So I can get back to this. Make sure that I touch the paper towel there a little bit. Push past these ugly phases because I know that that model is going to look good at the end. I'm not sloppy and I'm just very deliberate. Okay. Alright, let's get to some of this skin now. So, first thing I'm going to do is basically I'm going to start with 3 colors just so you can see you don't need 50 colors. You need a nice medium, that's my basic flesh. You need a shadow color, but none of these, well, maybe just a little bit of the basic, but none of these are being used all by themselves. Before I came on, I shook the crap out of these two because they hadn't been used in a while. But we'll put these on a different part of the wet palette so you can see. Okay. So my shadow color. There we go, a little bit of that. My shadow color is Indian Shadow 23. And my base color is this basic flesh. A dab of that. It's going to be the Caucasian skin first. And then my highlight color is going to be this pale skin. Also have an idea to use a little bit more of a yellow color, but just to see, this is kind of a cool skin. We'll see how it plays, and if we have to, we can warm it up just a little bit. So, I'm going to start with a little mixture of both of these. Put a little bit of Indian Shadow in first. Rinse the brush out. Take a little bit of basic flesh, kind of put it in here. Yeah. Get this kind of a cooler color there. That's a good base color there. Or a good flesh color. Shadow, I should say. Cool enough. Maybe just a touch more of that. Get really down in there into the plum color. Okay, not bad. I'm going to switch to a smaller brush here just because I want to be careful. Go to this rosemary. And I've got a good way of making sure your tips stay really sharp here. I'm going to put that video out here. That's actually the next one that comes out. That one should come out on Thursday of next week, I believe. It'll be the first one I've done in a while that wasn't a goof off video. So I put the brush into water first there and then wiped it on the towel just to get my tip back. I'm actually going to go in here on this guy's head. It's going to be a couple of really thin coats. I'm not going to worry about if it goes here. It's better to go under the hair than it is to leave it gray. So, very thin layers. And I also have to remember that I have to do his arm too. And their hands. Sometimes I get all the way through and I'm like, oh crap. Forgot about those hands. Alright, so you can see this is too much paint on the brush here. So again, I'm going to take it over. I'm just going to kind of touch that and make sure that it's coming off of there. And it's not going to run off and rush onto the model. This guy's got kind of a punk thing going on here with his hair. It's kind of cool. Plum color will be a good base coat. The smaller your brush, the faster it will dry out. Look at this guy's ears. And when it does dry out, you have to go back into the water and start all over with a sharp brush. I let that flood just a little bit when I went on there, but it's okay because I was going to spread that paint out anyway. I can't tell if this is his chin under here or a chin strap of some kind, but we're going to go ahead and paint it just in case. When in doubt, flesh it out. So if you're keeping score at home, that means two things, really important things you get. Number one, don't drop your model into your wet palette. And number two, when in doubt, flesh it out. So on the face, you'd rather have too much flesh to go over have to come back in with a really small brush. See this even around his mask and around his wavy punk-like hair. I'm going to go ahead and get flesh color because if something goes wrong, I can always go over top of the flesh color. Okay, so that's my punk rock base color. Okay. So we got blue shirt, really dark pants. Still not sold on that, but it's okay right now. Okay, so this guy, I need a darker skin tone. So what I may do is just go straight up this African shadow. Maybe put a little African and Indian together. We'll see how that looks. It's pretty dark. Okay. It's not bad. Okay, I'm gonna see what the other one's like. If I put a little bit of this. Maybe an okay start on the highlight there, but I think I like just the straight up African shadow. Let's see what happens here. Let's get this guy's thing. Yeah, that's gonna be fine. I can go with a little bit more of a plum color if I need to, but I was told a long time ago that if you start with a dark enough color on African American skin tone, as you move up the color, the highlights will be the same as they were on a, just they don't take up quite as much volume of whatever you're painting. Get around this guy's Zorro looking mask. Supposedly these guys have names, but I wouldn't know what they are. Anyway, back to what I was saying, the highlight colors are the same as Caucasian skin at some point. You just have to be careful not to go too much there. But you can see this is definitely good, different skin tone for this guy. And the last guy, you can see there's two difference there. Okay, that's the darkest one for spots showing through there. And again, I'd rather go over that mask than not over it. Okay, so I'm going to use a little bit of that other color and see what that starts to do here. Oh yeah, perfect. I don't know if you can see that on camera, but it's just bringing it up just a little bit. That's what I wanted. Just gonna give him a warm look on top of the head. Cool looking guy. I like him. Alright, let's go back to this guy. Let's go back. Oh, you know what we didn't do? You knew what you were probably yelling at me. What I didn't do is his arms. So, I told you. Okay, so you can see I'm actually going over part of the blue that I had before. That's the way you should draw it up. Something else when you get to it. Paint's drying too much in the belly there, so my bristles were starting to split. So I'll come back to that. By the way, if I need water in this, and you can see that the water is kind of getting dry over here, I have to rehydrate my sponge in a minute. Back to this part here. Let's get all the way under his arm. And I think to consult the box art here. So, there's my punk guy. Here he is right here. I was looking to see if any of his hand came through, and it doesn't look like it does. His pants are about the color that I was starting to make there. Maybe a little lighter than that, a little darker. Okay, well. Also trying to look up here and see if that skin, it looks like a beard there, so that's why I couldn't tell what it was. We'll get back to that. But anyway, the main reason to look at that is to make sure you don't need to lay any flesh down like in a hole in his gloves or something like that. Sculpts are awesome, by the way. I really like them. I plan on using this group as a kill team group, but I've never even played Necromunda. And I think I got the Paladite force as well. It's amazing how much the model, pardon the pun, starts to come to life when you get some flesh tones in it. It may take a couple of coats here. I'm actually going to go back and do his head a little bit more there. Get some more of that on. The top of the head to be warmer, and sort of the jaw line and below on male. Male bonus. Zoolander. On male models, you want the top of the head to be warmer and the jaw line to be cooler. Keep that in mind. Yes, I see now. That is definitely the whiskers of a beard. But again, it's better to get flesh colored on that, because if you miss part of the beard, it means you got a bad shave or something. Okay, looks like I need to go back to this arm a little bit too. I don't think my other guy had much of a arm showing. Nor did he have skin showing through there. I do see a part that I have to get back to. But anyway. Working on these. Alright. So we got some shadow there. So as that dries, start to build the color that we want to be the main color. And it's your basic flesh. I'm going to start actually mixing those together, so in case I need a glaze in a little bit, I can bring that back down. See here, that's kind of turning it a little bit more pink. This is way too much paint to have in a brush when you touch your model, so out it goes. Now I'm going to go in here and get this. And I'm going to see, make sure he's dry there. Yep, he's dry. Start to add some color back in. Now right up against his hairline, I'm not going to let this color get right in there against his hairline, nor am I going to let it come down around all the way to the bottom of his head. I'm going to leave that shadow, that original shadow. You can see if I do a good job of controlling my brush, raised edges, and it kind of leaves some area. Of that shadow below it. And as it dries, I'm going to come back in again and again and just kind of add some volume to that so you get some really good touch his ears here a little bit. Also, one of the things you might do in this situation is you might start with a little bit more on top of his head. On the tops of his arms. Nobody will pay much attention to that, whereas they're going to pay attention to the face a lot. Just going to mix a little bit more of these colors together here. I need to make that more of that color so that I can mix my base color and get that same color that I was looking at before. There we go. I need some more paint. I'll be watching this video again, by the way, checking the sound levels. I know that part's probably annoying. Sometimes the music gets so loud. But I'll also be watching it because I want to know what colors I used. If I'm not doing it live, I would usually be writing this down. But the video part of it will work too. Okay. So it's starting to build up there. Alright, let's go to his arm. There you go, you can see. Get the parts of the arm that I want to get it. Leave right up against his shirt. There'll be a little bit of space so that shadow will naturally fall in there. Even on the sides of his arm, see how I kind of went from this muscle on top of his arm to this right here? So painting it all in one motion. I kind of leave that there because if you looked at an arm, that's what you would see. It's not all the same color. Skin is very intricate. So little variations like that can bring out a lot in a model. And even though it's on this sculpt, slightly, you can tell, but I've really exaggerated it too, so that if this was just a flat, say it was just a 3D print, it might or might not have that level of detail. But it's up to you as the painter, kind of like a comic book artist and colorer. You're inking comic books. You're supposed to bring out what the penciler did and add to it. And the colorist should bring out music was getting ridiculous there. Kind of made what I was saying really, really important, maybe. Anyway, if you're the colorist, your job is to bring out the penciler, or the inker, his work. So your job here is to help the sculptor, so to speak. Okay, so he's kind of getting an idea what he looks like. Now I got to go in here on the forehead and bring that out a little bit more. And I'm going to keep going a little bit lighter. There, my skin tone. I might actually even end up I would do the eyes as well here, but I didn't put that color out, so I'm gonna wait on that and then pray that I don't mess it up when I'm painting that part live. I've done it enough though, and by it I mean messed them up enough to get myself into a position to fix stuff pretty easily too, so still working with it. I know I'm about my hour right now, but I'm going to go a little bit further and then call it a night. Keep walking on top of what I was painting before, keeping in mind that slow build on this is better than trying to wipe it all out in one brush. I'm also going to stay in the middle of these muscles as I keep moving up here. Like I said, I've already done that work to get that one muscle to show up. So I'm going to keep going until I'm getting more and more highlight on top of that muscle. And I'll take up less and less of the space as it goes. And if things ever go crazy, you just glaze them back down. This gradual buildup of these colors is really what you're shooting for. Okay. Gonna kind of hit these eyebrows over here. His wrinkled forehead, the little wrinkles should actually be lighter than the rest of his face. So if you go too early on scale 75 paint, by the way, you can definitely see yourself pulling up paint. You don't want that. Once the paint's on the model, you pretty much want to leave it on the model. See, that's really starting to come out pretty well. Just layer after layer, drawing it a little bit higher each time. Let's go back to the other skin tone. Try to get through this part tonight, and then we'll work a little bit more maybe tomorrow night. Okay. Okay. that African shadow, and then as a highlight, slight highlight, I had a mixture of African shadow and Indian shadow. And that'll give me a little bit brighter plum color. And I just need to go back and make sure that enough layers to get that color to kind of show up. Otherwise it'll seep back down into an interlock with that African shadow that'll be too dark. Okay. This guy has a couple of scars on top of his head. Probably from bumping his head on something. But I have to come back and play around a little bit with those. Definitely wanted to have two different skin tones, so there they are. I stated this before, but if there's a question on paint colors, you can ask. Happy to help. I can use, I've used Vallejo, I've used Games Workshop. Just about any of those colors, I can tell you which ones to go to if you're looking for a specific brand. Even P3. All of them have just different, you know, properties. I'm actually going to go over here and get a little bit of this acrylic retarder and put it in so I can keep that thin paint wetter longer. Like I said, it's probably time to reload my wet palette, but I'm just trying to get through this session. Okay. So make sure I touch the right model here. So this is my Caucasian friend here. Even if I glaze back down a little bit, that's okay. Get a little bit more of the side of his face anyway. So let's go down here. Hit the side. It's okay that I go over this one time with this lighter color because the paint will die back down and then I'll be able to bring it back up if I need to, or darken it down a little bit if I need to. Alright. Okay. I'm going to show you one more thing before we go. And that's that I'm going to go back up into my Caucasian highlight now. And I'm just going to get a little bit of this, or my Caucasian base. Get a little bit of this. Kind of pick out a couple of spots on this model that I know are going to have to be a little bit brighter. Top of his head, you'll see that because I've started with a good base coat on his skin, that highlight tends to work okay. and that actually will start to, if I'm just soft enough with my brushes, that will start to touching the side there, pick up. That scar that I was talking about, those scars. Okay. So there you go. Start to see that that color is okay. For a highest highlight, it's just the I'll make sure I get all this on both sides. I don't want this guy to look like he's not growing hair in one area. Okay. Like I said before, you can also end up going back to one of your former highlights and just kind of glazing that back down a little bit. So if you need to work it back and forth a little bit, that's fine. It'll actually leave a lot of the color that was lighter. To show up. There we go. I want to challenge you one more time to just make sure you understand that skin is not uniform in color on any color human being. Really will have variations of color in all skin types. Okay, there you go. 2 different colors, and that is where I am going to end up tonight. We will work on the leather in the next episode. That's going to do it for tonight, guys. Appreciate everything. Hope you're getting stuff done, and be back soon.